Hi, my name is John.
And my name is Lloyd.
And we're the hosts of The Pint,
a pop culture podcast.
Lloyd, if you had to tell any of the people out there that might be listening to The Pint for the first time about anything unsavory or disconcerting we might do on the show, what would you warn them about?
Well, sometimes we drop spoilers, and sometimes we swear like motherfucking sailors.
Fuck yeah, we do. You heard it from him. You've been warned.
Listen in.
Genuine freak, and you have to wear a mask.
You might be right.
But what it all comes down to is who's holding the umbrella.
Welcome to a brand new episode of The Pint. My name is John. With me tonight, returning from the Octagon, if you remember that episode a few months ago, from the Contrarians, it's Julio. Julio, what's going on, man?
Wow, very different movie today, John.
We jumped the Norris. We jumped the Norris.
Yes. I think that you tested me with that, and I proved that I could handle it. So now I got something that's a little more, I guess, interesting to talk about.
Yeah. The Octagon was definitely it's an interesting movie. As we explained on the show, it's the hardest to follow simple movie maybe of all time.
Yeah, this one doesn't have voiceover, so that's kind of a step down. But other than that, I think that we're in a better place.
Yes.
I'm doing great. I've actually watched this movie twice. That's because I haven't watched in a while, and so I watched it Friday night, and then I rewatched it this morning. Just throw at me like any questions. I should be able to like just answer them right away.
All right. I have an immediate question. So first of all, the movie we're talking about. We've been doing some big anniversary episodes this year on The Pint, and this is 1992. We're talking about Batman Returns, June 19th of 1992. So my first question for you, Julio, is we established you still lived in Peru at this time, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so here in America, and I know you know this from living here, but here in America in 1992, when Batman Returns came out, it was one of those movies that I remember it very well. Summer of my, I think, junior going into senior year of high school. It just stopped time and space. Like the world awaited this summer release. It's the sequel to the giantly successful Batman 1989. Did that at all permeate to Peru? Was this something that was Batman a success there? The film, Batman as a character, was this movie a blockbuster there? What's the deal?
Not the way it was here. And see, there was like this really weird period of time where you didn't really get theatrical releases in Peru, or if you did, like they were not big, money makers. It was piracy was really the way that you watch movies, because there was, not to get too dark, but like a good chunk of my childhood, like terrorism was like a big deal in the capital. Right. So you didn't really go out, like, or if you went out, you were kind of like risking your life. They were, bombing places and stuff. So movie theaters were kind of like shut down or not really like the place to be. I remember, I'm glad that you said 92 because I wasn't going to be able to make like the connection. Like 1993, when Jurassic Park came out, that's when like it opened in Peru pretty much the same weekend or around the same time that it opened in the States. And that was kind of like a turning point because by then things had gotten better. Movie theaters were kind of like on the rise again. We started having like multiplexes and all this. So I know that 1993 was like when movie blockbusters kind of like came back because they were, in theaters. People were going to see them in theaters. You could buy them on a shitty VHS pirated copy, but people were going to the theaters to see the dinosaurs. Not so much with Batman. Definitely 89, I watched it on VHS, just some black market copy that a friend had. And then I remember, it was a thing because there were toys and there were, clothing and all kind of like things that, the merchandising made it. And then when 92 came, I mean, it was a big deal because it was a sequel to 89, but not because it had like infected culture in Peru in a way that, the way that I see that it did here.
Right.
But it was just, like you said, everything stopped here. Over there, it was kind of like, oh, we got the VHS. We could just like watch it there.
So you didn't have like, the whatever the fast food restaurants down there are, they it wasn't like supersized cups with the penguin's face on it and we had here. Okay.
There wasn't like the lomo saltado with like Batman's cowl on top, just made of potatoes or something. No, it was just I remember the toys. I remember having like either when 89 or when Batman Returns came out, like we got like the action figure of the Michael Keaton Batman, which I used to call the chubby Batman because I was used to Adam West as Batman, and Keaton, the way that the cowl frames his face, he looks like he has a double chin. My brother and I were not about that, but then when they gave us the toy, we were like, I don't care, it looks cool, because he was all black, and so I remember we had the toys. And I had, we had the VHS tape, so we must have watched that a few times. Like, I know we talked about this on our friend Stu's show, but I was, that's how I think we ended up doing this recording because we both like this movie. But
yes.
I don't remember where you placed it. If you placed it above or under 89.
Well, we'll get into it right now. We'll rate this later, but I enjoy this more than 89.
Okay.
Especially upon rewatching. This is very much, and I think we discussed this on Stu's show as well. Warner Brothers gives Tim Burton, who's this new kind of stylized director who had only done, Pee-wee and Beetlejuice. They give him the keys to this giant franchise. And I feel very much like it's the Warner Brothers product with the Tim Burton spin to it. And then they offer him the sequel right away, and he says, I don't want to do a sequel right away. He goes and does Edward Scissorhands, and he really develops his style even further. And then they come back to him and say, do you want to do the sequel? And part of it is you can make it more your own. And this movie is like, this is Tim Burton's Batman. That might be a better title for it if Batman wasn't used already. Batman Returns is whatever, I get it. It's a sequel. But man, this is Tim Burton's Batman. Yeah.
I liked it even back then when we first watched it. I remember liking it more than 89. 89 was too much of a bridge to cross for me as a child. Like I said, growing up on the Adam West Batman, and then having this, not having read the Frank Miller comics or any of like the dark Batman takes, it was just felt completely alien. I didn't understand why they made the Joker part of his origin story. I didn't understand why Batman was so serious. So I was not part of the like 89 like craze, even in that sense. I watched and I was like, okay, I need to watch this again. And then when Batman Returns happened, I think that maybe, and actually I think that this still holds up because I was thinking about that this morning. I think it's a movie that benefits from having had 89 set up everything.
Yep.
And now you can just go in and have fun. So
no origin.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. You just can have a adventure in Gotham. This movie almost, honestly, watching it, and it's the first time I've seen it in a few years, this feels less like a Batman movie and more like a Gotham movie. Like it encompasses this weirdo city, and it gives all these characters this screen time. And in a movie called Batman Returns, I had to look it up on my little display button. Batman doesn't have a line, or Michael Keaton, for 40 minutes in this movie. He's introduced earlier in the movie. He doesn't open his mouth till like 38 minutes in the scene where he's watching the Penguin on TV with Alfred. First scene that the main character says a word in 38 minutes in. And part of that is because we have spent time building up the Penguin and building up Catwoman and building up Max Schreck. It's insane. There's a lot going on here.
I think it's also, you already know what you're in for if you watch 89. And so the aesthetics of it, the style, like, this Batman. I think that this Batman Returns Batman is actually a little more, I want to say vulnerable, or maybe more like easy to relate to than 89 Batman. But even then, it's still, if you go into Batman Returns having watched 89, you know what you're in for, so you just hit the ground running. And I had that problem with 89 when I was a kid. And even like whenever I watched it, since, I kind of have to get used to what Tim Burton's Batman is like, and that's not the case here. So, but even then, I mean, it's like, as a kid watching it the first time, like Batman Returns was still a pretty big departure from what I expected from my Batman. And, so that Penguin was like really grotesque compared to the Penguin that I was used to, even in the comics. And then Catwoman was way more sexual than anything I had.
This whole movie. This whole movie.
Yeah. The Penguin is so horny. I'd forgotten about that.
So one of the big things, before we're going to talk cast in a minute, one of the big things about this movie is that it did not make the money that Batman made. And it was considered in many aspects, even though it was the number one movie of 1992, if you don't do as well as the first one, you should do more. It's kind of a failure, right? And there's a long story, and we won't get into it too much here, about how McDonald's pulled their campaign, which makes me wonder, like, who at McDonald's didn't watch this movie first? But upon rewatch, so McDonald's had a huge Happy Meal campaign. I remember it. We joked about it a minute ago. Everything was, bat sized, and the cups had these bat discs on top of them, and get all 4 collector cups, all that stuff, because Batman is supposed to be, in the end, a comic book property, which translates to kids. Watching this movie for the first time in a few years, man, every scene with the Penguin, like, there's literally a scene where, I'm going to paraphrase it, where he says, "Just the pussy I was looking for." And I'm like, I am starting to kind of see why McDonald's might have. Now, again, McDonald's should have had people watch this movie first and go, "We're not going to do this at all." And they might have had the wrong people watch it first. But there's not just one line. The Penguin is just a horn monster through this whole thing, which makes sense. Look, he was abandoned as a baby. He lives underneath an aquarium with nothing but circus people and penguins. He's probably not gotten a lot of quality tang, but that being said, every scene with him, he's either horning after Catwoman or horning after some young political intern. And good God, I sat there and went, I could kind of see where the brass at McDonald's might have been like, holy shit, we're offering toys. We're offering toys in this film, and it's about people with dual personas that are just so sexually repressed. Let's talk about director Tim Burton. As we said before, Batman, Mars Attacks, Ed Wood. This is, if I were to take a list, if I were to say, if someone said to me, give me your top 3 movies that you consider like Tim Burton movies, like that gothy, weird aesthetic, this is in the top 3 for sure. Probably Edward Scissorhands, maybe even Sweeney Todd later on kind of has that feeling, but this definitely is one of those. Sleepy Hollow. Now here's where it gets a little confusing with who wrote this thing. So the original writer was a guy named Sam Hamm. Yes, Sam Hamm. He wrote
the first one, right?
He wrote the first one.
Okay.
He also later on wrote Monkey Bone, that weird movie with Brendan Fraser, and all the stop motion stuff. So he writes the first pass. Okay. The screenplay is credited to a guy named Daniel Waters. He wrote Hudson Hawk and Demolition Man. But during the shooting of the movie, Tim Burton brought in a guy named Wesley Strick, because he wanted to have stuff rewritten kind of on the fly. So Wesley Strick came in. He wrote Wolf with Jack Nicholson a couple years later and Arachnophobia a few years before. Now I'm going to give you a couple of little bits and pieces that they all added to this thing.
Okay.
The original Hamm script had the Penguin and Catwoman in it, but the plot was they were looking for a hidden buried treasure that was somewhere in Gotham. Okay. Just going to give you a couple things here, not a lot.
Okay.
In the Waters script, the guy who's credited as the final screenwriter, he came up with the Penguin running for mayor concept. But he also came up with Max Schreck, the Gothamite businessman played by Christopher Walken, was originally supposed to be the older brother of the Penguin. Okay. So that was the original idea. Wesley Strick comes in and he comes up with the idea of the Penguin's firstborn revenge against Gotham story. He took Robin out of the equation. Robin was originally supposed to be in this and was actually Marlon Wayans was hired to play Robin. He was costume fitted, but he was taken out of the script and then given a essentially like a contract where he would come back in 3. When Joel Schumacher made 3, he didn't want to use Wayans. He wanted to use Chris O'Donnell. He bought him out of his contract. I think it was on Jimmy Kimmel a couple years ago. You could watch an interview. Marlon Wayans got paid his full contract for that movie, even though he never did anything more than a costume fitting.
Good for him.
Good for
I'm glad there wasn't a Robin in this one though. There's no room. You have too many characters already.
No room at all. He also took Wesley Strick also took the idea of Max Schreck being the older brother and got rid of that. Wesley Strick, apparently his screenplay is the one that most of this was culled from, and I couldn't find information why, but he's uncredited and Daniel Waters is credited. So it's kind of like Daniel Waters came up with the bones and then Wesley Strick came in and kind of put all over that. Before I get to the next part, Julio, I want to ask you this because this is a big thing in superhero movies, and this is probably one of the first that formulated this idea amongst people or this complaint. Are there too many villains in this movie?
No. There could be, but somehow they managed to balance it properly. I always forget how big Christopher Walken's part is.
Huge.
Like I mean, Max Schreck is the real monster in this movie, and then the other two, you can make the argument that they're just like victims of circumstances up to a point.
Right.
But Shrek is the one that's really manipulating everybody, and he's just unapologetically evil, and he has no excuses. He didn't grow up in a sewer or anything. So I always forget, because I think it's because I always think of in Batman 89 how Jack Palance, he's the crime boss, but he's there for like maybe 10 minutes.
Right. He's dispatched pretty quickly.
Yeah, but Shrek is through the entire movie, and but yeah, somehow they split the time. It might be that is because Catwoman is kind of like in between. You know, she's not necessarily like a villain through the entire movie. Or it could be that it's just because the three of them are so different, and because the movie's not afraid, I think, of pulling back on the screen time for Batman / Bruce Wayne, that you know, it's okay to have these many villains, because like you said, this is really a movie about Gotham, and so they're not so much like hero and villains, and as much as they're just characters in the city, and you're just watching them bounce off each other. So yeah, this movie pulls it off. Most movies, I agree, they don't. I think that once they start adding more villains in the sequels, it usually just gets out of hand. These days, it doesn't even have to be a sequel. I guess they could just start off the first movie with just too many villains.
Yeah, and like you said, they spent the time to build these characters up, each one of them, and they each have their reasons. And like you said, Shrek is the monster, the Penguin, you know, yeah, he's vile, but like, you know, you kind of can feel for him a little bit, you know. How would you feel if as a baby you were dumped in the sewers and raised by penguins? And, you know, and Catwoman, you know, in the end, you know, she's been murdered, I guess you could say, at the beginning, and she seems to really be struggling with her mental health, like severely. So, I mean, you could kind of like take all that. She wears her heart much more on her sleeve than Batman does. Batman has the same issues as Catwoman, but he is more in control of his kind of like his veneer. She's new to it and she's losing it kind of slowly. This movie cost, let me see here, I have it written, $80 million to make. It kills me because this movie is so fucking gorgeous. It's so heavily produced that you could never do that nowadays. And Batman 89 cost $35 million, which that's crazy too. Because I mean, that movie was much, I guess, less extravagant, but still $35 million just, again, 30 years ago. The thing that's really amazing about this one, filmed between June of 91 and February of 92, 50% of the WB lot in Burbank was used for this movie, which is like unheard of for one movie. Like, you know, they might use 25% for a movie and then there's 15 other things happening. They said at the time of production, this was everywhere you went and everything was on wheels and moving around. Michelle Pfeiffer, in an interview I read, related a story of how if they filmed something one day on one set, And the next day she went back to it. It wasn't there. She had to find out from a PA where they moved it to. So, I mean, they really did build Gotham City because Gotham City is such a huge fucking star in this movie, right? I mean, it's just in the first film, the guy that was the production designer was a guy named Anton Furst, who had done a bunch of stuff. He could not get out of his contract with Columbia Pictures to do this second movie. A year after this movie, he killed himself terribly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they couldn't get Anton Furst back, who gave Gotham the very gothy, kind of Art Deco-y look that it had in the first movie, industrial. So they hired a guy named Bo Welch, who had done a bunch of stuff prior. Let me see here. I have it written down. I thought I had it written down. All right. Well, they hired Bo Welch to come in, who had done Beetlejuice prior with Tim Burton, and Burton brought him along. He came in and added such levels and layers to what First did in the first movie in terms of just, everything is, this movie reminds me so much of, in a way, Batman the Animated Series. And they both came out in the same year, just in the fact that they have very distinct landscapes, buildings. I'm not an architecture guy, but like it feels very 20s to 50s to me. Like, do you know what I'm saying? When you look at the town, what do you get out of it, Julio?
Yep, I think that the main thing that I feel is that it's such an organic extension of the first movie,
right?
Which that's why I didn't know that he was a different guy. That's even more impressive that he was able to just kind of like pick up the ball and just keep running with it and do it in a way that feels natural. Because everything that we see here, I think it still fits with the Gotham of the first movie. Which you just see, you're pointing the camera at different areas. So just like with the first movie, yeah, I also get that kind of old-timey feel. I think it's not just the city, it's also the way that, they're dressed, the fashion of Gotham. I think it has that, 20s might be going too far back, but maybe, yeah, because I think it's also the color palette that gives you
everything's silvers and grays and, and like the idea of like the Shrek department store is this very 50s type of department store, the giant cat head or whatever the smiling Cheshire cat logo and all that stuff. It's very big. These movies, as opposed to any other, even, I don't like them, but even the Schumacher ones are the most intriguing depiction of Gotham in any of the films, I think, because they're the ones that try to make it like live action cartoon or comic book the most. The Dark Knight stuff, the Christopher Nolan, it's just Chicago, right? The newest one, it's just like, Blade Runner City. This one here is literally trying to say this is something right out of a comic. Yeah.
The angles too, because you mentioned the animated series, and that's always like the city is very pointy, like
right.
That's here, like that's live action. The live action version of that is here. I like the big statues that you constantly see them in the background.
Yes, I like those too until you get to the Schumacher stuff and everything is like, a giant fucking statue or, but yes, this is the last movie it's the last movie in this line that's good, but it's also the last movie in this line that really gets it right. I mean, in this line I mean the next two Batman movies. I'm not talking about the Dark Knight trilogy. I like that.
Right.
So let's get into the cast, talk about who's in this thing. That's my dog in the background, by the way, going a little nuts.
My God, it's full of stars.
Michael Keaton, as we mentioned, plays Bruce Wayne in Batman. Beetlejuice, Mr. Mom, we all know Michael Keaton. Danny DeVito plays the Penguin. Oswald Cobblepot, Romancing the Stone, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Michelle Pfeiffer, Selena Kyle, Catwoman, not the original choice and not the original hire. The original hire was Annette Bening. Annette Bening got pregnant and had to drop out. So they brought Michelle Pfeiffer in. Nothing against Annette Bening, but I can't picture this going any other way. Michelle Pfeiffer from Grease 2, my favorite of the Grease films. And Scarface, Christopher Walken, Max Schreck, named after the actor who played Nosferatu in the original 1922 Nosferatu. Pulp Fiction, The Dead Zone. There was a story where Tim Burton wanted to hire Christopher Walken to play Max Schreck, and he had told, I think, one of his agent or someone that he was going to try to get somebody else, and the agent said, if you want Christopher Walken, why don't you just ask him? And Tim Burton said, because that man scares the hell out of me. So I think that's funny. He convinced him to do it, and he did it. And then a couple other smaller roles. Pat Hingle is back as Jim Gordon. He's from the first Batman 89, Maximum Overdrive, the Stephen King movie. And Michael Goff played Alfred, Top Secret, and Batman 89 as well. One of the things I wanted to mention about the film, and you bringing up the Adam West show, which I grew up on as well. This film here, do you feel like the influence a bit from the Adam West show, where it just maybe a little bit of the colorfulness of the characters, some of the humor? I'm not saying it's full on goofy or full on, no breaks, but I felt like maybe there was a directive from Tim Burton or somebody from Batman 89 to Batman Returns saying, and again, not as far as Forever or Batman and Robin, but saying, have more fun with it. Did you feel that?
I can definitely feel that they're having more fun with it. I've never felt like, not even like an echo of the early, the Adam West Batman, but I haven't watched Adam West Batman in decades.
I guess I'm more meaning like the fun aspect of it. Like let's not take ourselves so seriously. There's so much stuff in Returns that I giggled at or laughed at that I had forgotten about. Like just the little bits, like where Selena, picks up the stun gun from the knocked out guy and then shocks him, and kind of like covers her mouth and giggles, like little bits and pieces like that. I felt like they probably had more fun making this movie than 89.
Well, Batman himself seems just a tiny bit less uptight. I don't know why, but it doesn't make me cringe whenever he actually has a funny moment. It has the moment where I think it's one of the Penguin's henchmen that kicks him or headbutts him, and there's no. Oh no, I think it's where he's fighting the really big guy and sticks a bomb in him. But the close up of the smile on Batman's face, it's like it's not something that you think would fit in this movie for that character, but somehow it works. It could be that I'm just so into the movie that I can look past it. Like Bruce Wayne being funny, I appreciate a little more. I think that he gets some really lighthearted moments in this movie, just because he's smitten with. I
absolutely, watching this for the first time in a while, and I haven't watched 89 in a while, but I'll go back to it. It makes you really appreciate Michael Keaton even more as Bruce Wayne, especially when we just got done with, and I didn't hate the Batman, but like they negated that character completely. Like there is no Bruce Wayne in that movie.
Yeah, I listened to your episode and I was like, yep.
They just said we're not doing Bruce Wayne. And
that was their choice. It's not that they tried to do Bruce Wayne and failed it. It was just that they decided that there was no Bruce Wayne in this story. Right.
And then, you do the Christian Bale films and you get a Bruce Wayne and you get to see a Bruce Wayne that has a complete story arc and he's good. But in this one, I love the little bits where you see the humanity of Bruce Wayne. Like the line in this one where he realizes that he knows Selena, but he met her as Batman. And when he says, I confused myself for somebody else. And she's like, what? And he's like, and he shakes his head because like he, in these movies, you could tell he even has a hard time, like keeping it all like together. You know what I mean? Like, and he kind of has to like do things like that a few times. Like the scene towards the end where they realize who they are at the ball, it's just all played really well. Michael Keaton is an American treasure, man. I've always loved that guy. And I'm, as much as I'm sure a shit show the Flash movie is going to be, I'm looking forward to seeing him back in the cowl again, which normally I wouldn't say. Normally I'm like, leave things alone. Right. I just saw Jurassic Park Dominion and I can very easily say leave things alone. It doesn't always work, but there's something about Michael Keaton in the bat suit I want to see again.
I think that I have a hard time describing his Bruce Wayne other than, it works. And I rewatched 89 and Returns a few years ago, and that was the first time I'd watched them in a long time. And that's when I really came to appreciate them. And that was one of my main takeaways. It's like, wow, Keaton's Bruce Wayne is actually pretty awesome, but it's I think he doesn't have any exaggerated qualities like the other ones where you make it easier to pinpoint, oh, well, this is the take on Bruce Wayne, right? Like even
Right.
Nolan's is a more realistic Batman, but you can tell like that clear delineation of like, oh, this is the obsessed Bruce Wayne, right? And the Bruce Wayne that puts on a front when he's out there at the parties, and he plays like this superficial douchebag, and then he's laser focused, and then the Ben Affleck Batman, that Bruce Wayne is the like extremely tortured, dark one that's just been beaten by life. And then the Robert Pattinson one is the one that doesn't exist. He's just Batman. There's no Bruce Wayne. And Adam West is the silly one. But Michael Keaton is like, he's the normal dude. I mean, he still has all the characteristics, but it feels like he's the one that's the most balanced. Because
He's the most well-adjusted.
Yeah, he's always that Bruce Wayne, like it's not that he's playing up a character when he's going up to talk to Shrek or to Selena, he's the same guy as he is when he is talking to Alfred. And I think that that's kind of a subtle difference.
It's endearing because it's the first time that you actually do feel like Bruce Wayne isn't just a mask. You know what I mean? Like it's extreme in the newest one, like, and I think that's how they're going to go with it. And even in the Dark Knight trilogy, there's a character there, but it's about being Batman, and the character, like you said, is playing it up. He's not playing up what he is. He's just Bruce Wayne, millionaire or billionaire, whatever he is, and he's also Batman. And I love the fact that like you said, this doesn't go back to the first movie. There's nothing about the parents. There's no origin. We're just in a Batman adventure, right? There's a couple. They had to do a couple things like Vicky Vale. They have to because movie going audiences are like, why isn't Kim Basinger in this one? Very simple. People break up all the time. They broke up, and they got to figure out a way for him to kind of like fall for Selena Kyle, and they did it very easily. Mm-hmm. She's brought up a few times. There's even the good joke where they're talking about security with Alfred, and he's like, "You're the one that let her in the Batcave." Like, It wasn't me. So the setup of this movie. Let's get into the actual the bulk of the movie itself. We start off with a prologue, and it's entirely no dialogue. And Pee Wee Herman, Paul Rubens, coming back from Pee Wee's Big Adventure, apparently plays some kind of aristocrat. He's in a giant mansion, and he seems stressed out. And we hear the cries of a baby and a mother in another room, screaming of the mother. And he goes running in. Now, right off the bat, he's got the monocle. He's got the long cigarette holder. So we figure we're getting into a Penguin origin story. And then over the course of like this 3 or 4 minute prologue, we kind of see the fact that the baby that was born, there's something wrong with it. They keep it in a cage, which is terrible. This is the first viewing where I ever noticed that his obsession with rubber duckies is from the cage. I never noticed that. Because in the film, he rides around this giant this giant duck mobile in the sewers, and there's a couple scenes where he has umbrellas with rubber duckies, and when he's a baby in the cage, that's like his little toy. There's a rubber duck hanging out, and I went, "Oh fuck, I never noticed that." Also, I didn't write down the actress's name, but the wife, the mother, is also from Pee Wee's Big Adventure. She was, I think her name was Diane in the movie. She's the one that wanted to go to Paris. So Tim Burton brought a couple actors back from that. And then Julio, they do the worst thing ever. What do they do?
Are you talking about the parents or the movie?
The parents.
Oh,
the parents.
Say it's a movie terrible because it jumps ahead. They dump the baby. Do they dump him directly in the sewer or just the river?
The river.
The river, right? And then that leads into the sewer.
They take his bassinet and they drop it in the sewer, into the river, and he just goes into the... I don't really know if the sewers are correct or if it's like the underground of
catacombs of
Gotham. of this Gotham, but he ends up where all the poop goes probably. And and I thought to myself watching this scene, and now this scene's always been rough. It hasn't changed since 1992. But I was thinking about the McDonald's execs again. And I'm like the McDonald's execs after their Happy Meal thing has been launched and everything is wonderful, and they're watching this movie release now, and their product is on, like kids are eating it and getting the toys, and the first scene is infanticide. I'm like, I don't know how they felt about this at all.
Somebody got fired. That's what happened.
I think a lot of people got fired on this. First thing I noticed when you get into this prologue that I think is true, and I'll ask you if you think it's true too, is the Danny Elfman score is fucking 10 times better than the first movie, which was great. But my Lord, man, the music in this movie is beyond fantastic.
It's just iconic. I think it's transcended pop culture in a way that I think even if you haven't seen the Tim Burton movies, you've heard the score. Yeah. Now it's just like something, and I like the music in all the other Batmans, to different degrees. But this is the only one that I can just, hum off the top of my head. And this is the one when somebody says Batman music, this is the one that comes up, comes to mind.
You have the elements of the first movie that he incorporates, and obviously the theme. But then, because this movie is takes place during Christmas, hashtag is Batman Returns a Christmas movie. Talk about that yourselves. I don't want to talk about that here. But you kind of get little snippets of what sound like Christmas hymnals and stuff like that, and then you get kind of the choir type stuff towards the end. I was reading about, or actually, I watched on the Blu-ray an interview with Elfman where he talked about how the first movie, Warner Brothers didn't necessarily want him because he didn't have a lot under his belt. He did a good job for them. And a lot of the attention for the music in the first movie was towards Prince because of the Prince soundtrack as well. There's none of that here. This is all just, the orchestral and the Elfman stuff. So he gets brought back in and he's confident now and he kills it. And he also, I guess, from what I was reading, is he wrote or recorded double the amount of music. Obviously it's not all in the film, and I didn't see if they said if he just kind of put everything away, but there might be some giant soundtrack out there. I might check it out. I might go on Amazon and see if it's out there, because 95 minutes worth of music, I think he said at one point. And I think the most they usually do is 45 or 40 interspersed throughout a movie. So he went nuts
Batman
on that.
Batman Returns B-sides.
Yeah.
Just
hits upon hits upon hits.
That's exciting. No, it also, I think, it fits a little bit on the. Well, I guess it makes sense because Burton and Elfman have worked together so many times, so I think it kind of fits in that long time collaboration. The Christmas elements, I remember, also kind of bringing me back to other Burton movies. You mentioned Edward Scissorhands, and that one is not a Christmas movie, but it has kind of a climatic ending that has all those elements with the snow and
right.
So, and I want to say the score for, I mean, we did both Beetlejuice and Edward Scissorhands on the show a while ago, and it was one of those things with as soon as the music kicked in, we're you can tell it's a Danny Elfman score.
Oh yeah,
directed by Tim Burton. And it's the same thing here. It's it's a Batman movie, and yes, it's the theme of the previous, the 89 one, but it's also very much a Tim Burton, Danny Elfman collaboration, just the way it plays with the images and everything. So it's, it just all feels of a piece, and it's, I would say even comforting to see that it still works all these years later, because you would think that it would have grown old by now,
Right.
Like I said, that's the Batman theme, but it's still iconic.
It totally is iconic. It totally works. And apparently between this movie, I was reading, and A Nightmare Before Christmas, which came out the next year, there was some kind of massive strife that happened between Elfman and Burton for a while. And Burton's next movie, Ed Wood, in '94, was not scored by Danny Elfman, and it wasn't because Danny Elfman was busy. Their relationship had deteriorated and then came right back. So I mean, I don't know about everything from that point, but I know Sleepy Hollow he did. I know he did Planet of the Apes, so he came back. But yeah, Ed Wood was not scored by Danny Elfman because they had some problems, and a lot of it they said was over Batman Returns.
Oh wow,
yeah, which is interesting. And Nightmare Before Christmas, which he didn't direct but he produced, Tim Burton, and and Danny Elfman's the singing voice for the main character. So who knows what happened there? But apparently there was some stuff going on. So let's talk about the fact that everybody always talks about how Batman doesn't kill anybody. Because in '89 he clearly kills people, right? The guy he lifts in the air, hits in the head with the bell with his feet, and then drops 1,000 feet. Right. He dies. He bombs out some people with the bombs that come off of his wheels. In this film, right in the beginning, so the beginning setup is we're in Gotham Square. They're going to light the Christmas time tree, and we have the mayor of Gotham. We have Max Schreck, who we mentioned, Christopher Walken, his son Chip, played by the guy who's going to play Leatherface in the Michael Bay Chainsaw movies. I think that's about all he has going for him. They're all getting ready to do this. As this is about to happen, a giant box wheels itself into view and explodes, and out come the the Red Triangle Gang. They don't say the name at the time, but it's a circus themed gang. And this is another one of the great things of this movie. Very comic booky, very cartoony. You've got clowns, you've got acrobats, you've got weird silent women with poodles going about and destroying town. One of my favorite, like it might sound goofy, but this is truly one of my favorite scenes in cinema, is the bat signal scene in this movie. It's so fucking epic. I get wood when I see this scene. It's like, I always tell people, I love Jurassic Park. It's not my favorite movie ever. I love it. The scene at the end where the banner's falling in front of the T-Rex and he roars, I literally have to like leave the room. I get woozy. So this gang explodes onto the streets of Gotham, and Commissioner Gordon, says, "Turn on the signal." The signal goes up, and then we go to Wayne Manor. Now, this is poor design on his part, I think, because I think anybody could see this probably.
That was my first thought. I hate being an adult now.
I think the same thing. I'm like, it's so cool, yet it's so impractical. The signal goes in the sky, and you get this shot of Bruce Wayne sitting in the dark at his like desk in his study, hand on his fist. And as the signal goes in the sky, it reflects upon these other signals that are like right outside of his house that have bat signals on them. And they reflect off of each other and shine a light directly in the room he's in. And he sees it. And again, this scene gives me chills. He stands up into the bat signal and just looks over out. I love that. The iconic, just the look of that is amazing. And we get Batman. Batman rushes into town. And this is where he starts killing motherfuckers left or right.
It's true. That bit of Keaton getting up and just standing in front of the signal, that was, I want to say, the first cutscene in the Batman Returns video game, the Super Nintendo video game.
Oh, okay.
So I remember seeing it over and over, because it's what you see when you start the game, and it was amazing.
It's awesome. It's super awesome. I already made the episode art for this episode, and I use that because to me that's just the coolest bit in the whole fucking thing. I mean, and I love this movie, but I just love that. So he shows up, and we get the standard, Batman's gonna fight off all the goons, and it's a lot of cool stuff. We get to see the Batmobile again, as it does some cool new stuff. It shoots out some discs out of the side. It's got these long things that come out where he could trip people up, but then it's got the most impractical thing I've ever seen in a car, a hydraulic ram that's there just to turn it around. Now it's cool, but this is where he kills the first guy. So there's a one of those guys that shoots fire, and the guy is just burning stuff up left and right. Batman backs him into a corner. The guy blows fire at the Batmobile. He engages the hydraulic ram. It lifts the body of the Batmobile up, spins it around to face the other way, drops it, and then Batman lights the turbine and blows this guy into fucking flames. Best case scenario, this guy lives the rest of his life with third-degree burns. He's got to have skin grafts 3 times a week for the rest of his life. Worst case scenario, he's just going to die right there. And in all honesty, that might be the better case scenario, is that he dies right there. Take that with what we said. Batman kills people in these movies. Later on in the movie, Julio mentioned it earlier, he sticks a bomb in a guy's pants and throws him down the sewer. And the guy blows up. So just get that out of your head right now. Because I hated Batman vs Superman. I did not enjoy it. But there was that whole bit I remember in the movie where he's driving through town. He's shooting people down with the machine guns on the Batmobile, and people were up in arms about it. Go back and watch the Tim Burton Batman movies. He certainly has no problem lighting them up left and right.
Yeah, I think that I don't know. I mean, I it's never bothered me. I think that it's just what you bring into the movie. The movie never tells you that Batman doesn't kill.
Right.
So
right.
That's, you just think this Batman, the Batman in the Burton movies is just the Batman that just gets it done.
Gets it done. This is that version.
Yeah. That's fine. I'm like, I can see how a hardcore fan of the character in the comics might have issues with the adaptation, and that's valid. Like you're just saying my Batman doesn't kill, and if he kills, then he's not Batman. That's fine, but that's like the tricky thing of like, well, can you separate the movie,
right,
as from the original material? But
you kind of have to be able to, because it's an adaptation. There's going to be something a bit different, right?
I'm a big Spider-Man fan, and I guess if they made a Spider-Man movie where Spider-Man is just killing people left and right, that movie would have to be really good for me to be able to get past that.
Right.
Because I would just say like, well, that's not a Spider-Man movie. So it fails like that first test. But because I guess I'm not as big a Batman fan in the comics, and I have a problem just cruising through this and being like, yeah, sure, he kills people in this one. It's fine.
The Batman in the comics in the early days used a gun. And I mean, that's one of the big no-nos. Everybody says he doesn't use a gun because his parents were killed by a gun. In the original version, he used a gun. So, things change, and I get you on that. I totally get you on that. Let's talk about Selena Kyle. So Selena is the put-upon secretary. She'll call herself an executive assistant, eventually acquiescing the secretary of Max Schreck, the awful bad guy played by Christopher Walken, power mad. He's essentially power mad. He is trying to come up with a system. He has it in place to siphon power from Gotham City and use it at his leisure and for his benefit. Selena is she's kind of a crazy cat lady. You kind of get the feeling, right? She's beautiful, probably in her late 30s or mid 30s, but she's, and they make it a thing. Her mother's constantly calling her about like, why aren't you married? And she lives alone.
Unbelievably, some guy cancels a date with her.
Yeah.
He was canceling a date with Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yeah, I don't get it either. As Bruno Mars said in that song, she is white gold. So she works for Matt Schreck, and this is a scene that I had to just kind of hold my breath on and just kind of like say, okay, whatever with it. But what ends up happening is she goes to the office after this whole Gotham attack because she forgot some papers for Max Schreck's meeting with Bruce Wayne. She's being a good assistant, and she reads more than she should. That's all fine. But then when Max Schreck approaches her, she just tells him all the stuff she should not be telling him. Like, are you cringing in this scene that she just keeps talking and talking and talking?
Yes, but I gave her a lot of latitude because she seemed to be so socially awkward.
Yeah.
That I 100% believe that she just couldn't stop herself.
I did too. And it was killing me because, like, you and I know, besides seeing this movie 10 times, and we know he's going to kill her.
Yep.
Because she basically says, like, well, it seems like you're sucking power and not, and he's like, and he kills her. He throws her out of a window, which, by the way, is a great scene where she's hitting each of the awnings on the way down, hits the ground. She seems to be dead. We don't get any explanation. Bunch of cats surround her, and she wakes up. And now she is a totally different person. Take whatever you know about Catwoman from the comics. This is a different Catwoman. But at the same time, it's an iconic Catwoman. If you were to say Catwoman to 9 out of 10 people, they're going to point to Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman.
She has the whip. She has the tight costume. She's acrobatic. I don't know how much burglary she actually gets up to in...
Nothing in this.
No, right? No, she just breaks in and just
she's
blows
more
shit up.
Yeah, more of an anarchist than like a cat burglar. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she, she's also kind of doing the, she finds a woman who's about to be assaulted. And I love this scene because she beats the guy and stops him. But then when the woman thanks her, she's like, shut up. Like, you make this so easy. Like, be, she doesn't say it, but it's like, be more like me, not like the old me. So that's, we've got this character out there. Let's get into the Penguin now. The Penguin comes out of the shadows. What's his whole initial plan, Julio? What is he saying he wants to do?
He says he wants to find his parents, but that turns out to not be true, right? Like, because through Bruce's investigation, it's implied that the Penguin's been full of shit from the beginning.
Right.
Or was that a dead end? Like, I was never clear on that. He didn't live his entire life in the sewers. At some point, he joined like a circus troupe, and
right.
That wasn't like
He was the bird boy. Yeah, that
Right.
like and they kind of make it through his investigation that like everywhere this circus crew went, crime happened,
Right.
you know, and then they'd move to town to town to town.
Yeah. This is there's a far more compelling investigation than the detective work in the Batman, and he didn't take 3 hours to figure stuff out.
Do you mean the detective work in the scene where he had to have the cop tell him what a carpeting tool was?
Yes.
Yeah. The world's greatest detective is like, what is that? And the guy, oh, my uncle's a roofer. You know, like shut. Like again, I didn't hate that movie, but like I'm looking forward to my second watch because I'm not sure. I'm not sure which way it's going to go, but all the detective work in the Batman, somebody tells him something. Like he doesn't figure it out. They're just like, oh yeah, that's this and that's that, and he's like, oh, good point. I'm like, oh my god,
That's detective work, John. You talk to people. That's
yes, yeah,
But at the same time, it's not like the Penguin wanted to be mayor, right? That's Shrek's.
that's Shrek's thing because Shrek wants to get rid of the current mayor because
Right.
the current mayor and Bruce Wayne are against his plan for evil for what he wants to do. So he wants to get a patsy. He figures, okay, well, I could take this guy and his story, and Gotham falls in love with him immediately, despite the fact that we didn't really mention it totally yet. Like you said, comparatively to the TV show and the comics where he's just a regular kind of like rotund, fat little guy. What is this Penguin like?
He has flippers instead of hands. I mean, it looks like personal hygiene is not his strong suit.
His onesie that he wears, like that whole, it looks shit stained through the whole movie. So he wears like a set of long johns. He also wears like, the top coat and the top hat at different points, but his de facto is a set of long johns that they did such a good, the costuming department in this movie is great because I literally went, that guy stinks like shit. Completely all day long.
He's pretty gross when he eats.
Yes.
He's eating raw fish, just chewing with his mouth open.
And I got to ask you, what is the green stuff in his mouth at all times? Like I thought in earlier viewings that it was his blood. Like at the end, it's obviously his blood. When he dies, a giant stream of black green stuff comes dripping out of his mouth and he dies. But like, if you pay attention to the movie, his teeth and mouth are just constantly covered in fucking slime. It's revolting.
Well, they reference Shrek's toxic waste.
Right.
So I think that he's just, even if he's not directly consuming the toxic waste, he's being around it for so long that it has to have changed him somewhat. I mean, obviously, I don't know if the flippers are a direct consequence of Max Shrek's not sticking to the health code in his business dealings, but still, that's he's definitely, he has a bunch of mutations, I think, going on, and that might be just, like a glow in the dark kind of
yeah, it's gross
development. He looks pretty terrible, and yet he is embraced by the city just because he saves a baby. And this got me thinking, and it might be just like this specific moment in time that we're living right now, but is this Tim Burton's most political movie? His only political movie. I mean, I don't know. I didn't go through the filmography, but I was just like going through the greatest hits. And he always seems to be very, politics is not something that he delves on. And yet here, because we end up kind of having a subplot that has to do with the race for mayor and just how easily manipulated the masses are one way or the other. I was
right.
Like, wow, what's happening?
Yeah. 30 years prior to, well, I mean, it's always existed, but yeah, it's very prescient for today. Yeah, I guess you're right. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot of, I mean, you really think about it in the end, mental health is all over this thing.
Yep.
Like, the Catwoman character in particular, she knows she's struggling. Is it because, she was murdered and didn't come back right? Like, they don't really ever get into that, but she's kind of unhinged, and they do a great job of making her appear like she's always like kind of stressed, even when she's looking good. And they've got her, her hair is always a little messed up. They've done a good job of making her look like a character that is kind of like always got something else going on or on her mind, or and as the movie goes along, physically she's falling apart worse and worse.
Mm-hmm.
And they show that in her suit coming apart, as by the time you get to the last scene, it's half gone. The Penguin decides he's going to run for mayor under Shrek. And it doesn't take too long from point A to point B where, Batman has kind of gone from initially Bruce Wayne being sympathetic to him because of the parent angle, I hope he finds his parents, to suspecting him like almost immediately when he starts to look into it and seeing all the, this gang has been roving the country for years, to just making it a point that he's going to stop him. And the Penguin understands that. So he realizes he has to kind of make Batman the public enemy number one. So what he does in that case is they're going to have a relighting of the tree ceremony with the ice princess. If the ice princess, by the way, who is not a bad looking woman, is the best looking woman in Gotham has problems. I want to just put that out there. I'm not being mean, but you get the idea. She's supposed to be like Miss Gotham. And again, she's not bad looking, but if that's the tops Gotham has, I mean, Selena Kyle is better looking than that.
Well, Selena Kyle has way too much going on.
Yeah, she does.
I think what happened is like this lady, she had nothing else going on. She says she's an actress. She doesn't just do lightings of trees. But I think that if she's seriously considering the Penguin as a talent scout, then she doesn't have much going on.
Yeah. So the Penguin pretends to be a talent scout, goes into her little trailer area, and uses a batarang, which earlier in the film, of the poodle I mentioned earlier, part of the gang, steals from Batman. By the way, there are 2 CG shots in this film, I believe they said. One of them is when the batarang is hitting all the guys. That's a CG shot. And the only other one is 2 times when the armor on the Batmobile goes up and down. That's all CGI. But the penguins and all that stuff were all animatronics, all done by Stan Winston, too, by the way. The late, great Stan Winston, Predator, Aliens. He did that in particular. He hits her in the head with the batarang and sets up this whole she's been kidnapped thing. And meanwhile, at Wayne Manor, Bruce and Selena are having their little date, but they're obviously both a little distracted. They start to make out a little bit. Now, we didn't mention this, but they had a fight earlier in the movie where Selena stabs him in the side with her claws, and very, very rudely and very meanly, by the way, which I didn't think Batman had this in his arsenal. He throws a bottle of like fucking blue acid at her and really fucks her arm up, right? I mean, were you surprised that he did that? Like, I know Batman, he obviously kills in this, but like maiming Batman, you're going to maim now?
It's just, I think he acted on instinct. He just lashed out. He just grabbed the first thing that wasn't his belt. And it's like, go away.
He's like, I don't have my grappling gun. I don't have my mace here. Here, take a fucking armful of acid.
Yeah, I think he was probably, he's not used to being hurt this badly so quickly. And suddenly somebody's just clawing at his entrails. So
yeah,
like, just make it stop.
Make this stop. So as they're making out on the couch, she kind of rubs his side, and he juts a little bit because it hurts, and he goes to caress her arm, and she's got this huge fucking welt. So you're getting the feeling that we're getting to the point where they're going to figure out who each other is. And all of a sudden, Alfred tells him there's something going on. The Ice Prince has been kidnapped. So he makes one of his famous excuses, which is another great Bruce Wayne scene where he's he wants to see her again. He likes her, but he's trying to get rid of her. And he's doing it through Alfred because he can't do it himself. But she, unlike Vicky Vale, is doing the same thing because she wants to get down there too. So they both leave. They both change into their identities. He goes down. I want to ask you this because this is a big part of it. The bat suit in this movie, different than the first movie. It weighed 55 pounds. Some of the changes they made where they put a zipper in the crotch. In the first movie, there was no zipper. Michael Keaton said, "Can you put a zipper in the crotch so I could take a piss?" And they worked it out. So they put a zipper in the crotch. And the other thing they changed was the boots are not solid boots. They're Air Jordan sneakers that have a sheath over them to make them look like boots. So it was more easy for him to move, like to walk. They did not change in this movie the fact that he still can't look up without bending all the way backwards. He does it several times in this one. But what I wanted to ask you about it was the first Batman movie of 89 versus this. The first movie, the suit is very much designed to look like musculature. This movie, it's very much designed to look more like hard lines, like slats across the abdomen. Which one do you prefer? Because I prefer this movie over the first one. I like the clean, almost robotic look instead of like it's supposed to look like he's got like a fucking 12-pack under there.
Yeah, I maybe I would like I agree. I would like the 89 version a little more if it was more flexible, but it isn't. And that's my main problem with 89 when I watch it, is that even all these years later, even though I know what I'm in for, I have a hard time watching how rigid Batman is, because the movie is expecting you to believe that he is not. There's a lot of stunts that he does where you're like, how is he doing that when, he can barely turn his head? So this movie, I think, is a little easier to handle that aspect of the costume. Like, you're right, it still looks very restricted, like as far as his movement goes. But I didn't find myself constantly just being taken out of the movie because his movement seemed unnatural. Like here, the worst that happens is that there are times where I'm like, you should be moving a little faster. Like he'll knock somebody down, or like the Ice Queen falls and he kind of like walks quickly to the ledge instead of sprinting like I would expect Batman to do, just jumping over that. There's some limitations you can notice, but overall, like, it looks better in movement, which makes me like it better just overall. But yeah, this one, I think, going with the theme, it looks like a slightly more casual Batman.
It's Friday Batman, like,
yes,
Hawaiian shirt Friday Batman. Yeah. Don't say that out loud, because they'll make a toy out of that. If you know anything about Batman action figures, you ever notice that, like when Batman Returns, like the toys came out, I'm sure there was probably 7 costumes that were never in the movie. Arctic Batman. As you said, the Penguin ends up essentially tossing the Ice Queen off of the building. I got to be honest, hadn't seen this movie in a while. I forgot he doesn't save her. She fucking dies. In every other Batman movie ever, he would have jumped off the building or used the grappling gun. He does not get there, and she falls to her death. As this happens, everybody says, "Oh, Batman did it." As much as I like this movie, this plot point is just glossed over, that like the town is after Batman for any real reason. It just completely disappears. Like, we never hear anything about it really again. Meanwhile, while this is happening, somehow the Red Triangle Gang have the Batmobile blueprints. What are they doing to the Batmobile, Julio?
I guess they're giving remote control to the Penguin. They have a smaller version of the Batmobile that they've built up. This is technology that shouldn't be available to them
at all. To people that live in the sewers. They've got a train. They have a train later in the movie, and they live in the fucking sewers. So
yeah, I guess it's a very like personal choice. This is just how they want to spend their life. But yeah, I don't have a problem with the subplot of the Batman being framed for murder, because I think that's very much of a piece with the way that the plot in this movie goes. Like, there's a lot of, if the movie wasn't so enchanting, I wouldn't be able to get past the way that the story moves from one point to the other.
I agree with you. I agree. Yeah.
But the one point where I was like, come on, you got a little too lazy on this one. It's just that they just show up and they push a button on like a remote control and they completely disable the Batmobile security system. They're able to go in and just mess with this technology that I'm assuming they never had access to before. And then they basically are given remote control to the Penguin. The Penguin can get on his own mini Batmobile and drive the real Batmobile, which really fucks Batman over. So that part, I'm like, I could have done with just one scene of setup where like somehow they get that one little MacGuffin that will allow them to control the Batmobile remotely, instead of just showing them as being extremely capable for this one bit of the movie. Right. Because it's convenient, for the story. I
think the MacGuffin was the fact they have the blueprint. Where the fuck do you get blueprints? Like in the Dark Knight trilogy, it makes sense because the Batmobile is military tech. So there is a blueprint out there somewhere for it, But like, this is something that Bruce Wayne built in his fucking cave.
Right, but so if they had somebody infiltrate, they can't do that with the cave. I don't know, they like.
No, I absolutely know what you mean, because it is a little maddening. So he takes over, and as he takes over the Batmobile, he's going on this joyride. He's taunting Bruce over the comms in the Batmobile, and he's saying all the things he shouldn't say. People at Gotham are idiots, and all this stuff. And Bruce, gets out the Bat CD and he records everything because he needs evidence. So he records everything on it, and then he finally figures out through a diagnostics that the transmitter is under the vehicle. He punches through the floorboard, rips it off, gets control again. But right before he gets like full control again, he's getting chased by some Gotham police cars, and he's heading right towards the smallest alley in the history of alleys. And again, I'm not even gonna lie to you. I collect Batmobiles, Hot Wheels, and stuff. I have what's called the Bat Missile because I love this movie. But like, at what point ever would he ever say to himself, "I need a feature on this vehicle"? Right now, think about features from Batmobiles. In the Dark Knight, we get the great scene where the motorcycle, the Bat Pod, pops out of the Batmobile, and I could see that being something you could use. Okay, the Batmobile is completely fucking disabled; it will not move. I'm going to make it so that like one of the front wheels and one of the back wheels break off like an escape pod, and it forms into a bike. That makes sense. I don't know if there's ever a point where him and Alfred are sitting around the cave and go, Master Wayne, what if you ever have to go through something extremely narrow? And Bruce goes, you know what? I'm going to make it. So.
Well, but I mean, actually, I think it makes perfect sense, because how many times driving in this Gotham do you think that he came up to a point where I'm like, man, I wish this was thinner? Because how many of those alleys are like all over the city? I
get that, but like, I wish, and I get that it's 1992 technology with minor CGI. I wish that somehow everything folded into it. It blows off of it. So somewhere out there's some dude that's dragging a piece of the Batmobile home to like put in his man cave. You know what I mean?
So he can study it and he can develop a way to remote control it.
You know what?
2 movies down the line.
I'll tell you what right now. If that scene, if the Bat Missile scene happened in part 1, and they explained that the Penguin had gotten part of it from, I would have fucking applauded it. Actually, one of the things I thought was pretty cool was in one of the original scripts. I don't know if it was Sam Hamm's or the original Daniel Waters script. They said that it was just a minor bit, but some of the stores in Gotham, because of like the whole Batmania, like Batman saved the day, and there was like kind of like supposed to be more of an element of, like get your Batman stuff here. They were selling pieces of the Batwing because it goes down and you don't think he ever recovers it. Right. So apparently people salvage pieces, and that was part of the script they didn't use. So yeah, he blasts off the fairings to it. The wheels turn in line, and he goes through this narrow scene. It's a great fucking scene. It's again, it makes no sense whatsoever. So he decides, as the Penguin is making another one of his speeches to Gotham, and with the help of Alfred, that he is going to out him. Bruce Wayne is going to silently out him and play these clips to everybody so they hear it. First things first, Julio, we didn't have it here in America. Did you have, by any chance in Peru around this time, a Batman logoed CD player? Like, did you have that? No, nothing like that?
I'm sure that it existed somewhere in the world, because that is merchandising that was, begging. Actually, that sounds more like the kind of thing that would come out with the Schumacher movies.
Yeah, oh, totally. Totally.
You had the Bat credit card and, the Bat CD player.
Do you also think, because I don't know if this would work, because I've never seen an open CD player, could you scratch a CD like a record? I don't think you can, right?
But if you're Batman, you can.
You can, yeah, right? It's one of those answers, like, like people always say, like, about like the Dark Knight Rises, like he had a broken back. How did he get out of that prison and get back to America with no money? And the answer is always he's Batman.
Yeah.
So I guess the answer to this is he's Batman. He could scratch a CD. He's the Jam Master Jay of CDs.
So this is this is where it hit me, like the whole political part of it, because the Penguin is telling them everything he wants to, what they want to hear, and they're cheering him on, and then Batman takes over the frequency and then starts playing what the Penguin said to him in the Batmobile, and it's just basically saying, talking about how he's just taking all Gothamites for a ride and blah 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 blah.
Yeah. And
then the crowd turns on him, and that's the end of the Penguin's political career. Like, that's all it took. An audio recording.
An audio recording. Well, I mean, if you really want to get into it, the only thing that was necessary to defeat the Penguin throughout this whole movie was Batman jamming frequencies. He jams the frequency in this scene that ruins the Penguin, and then when the Penguin's going to launch the missiles, he jams the frequency to the missiles, which I don't even know if that's possible. and stops that. So if the Penguin had just used a different frequency for either of those things, it might not have been as easy. Okay, so the Penguin gives up. He says, fuck it. He goes back down to the sewers, and he's like, I'm not Oswald. I'm the Penguin. I'm reclaiming what I am. And here's my real plan. What's the real plan, Julio?
So he's going to go biblical. He's going to take the firstborn. So he says sons. Does that mean that he's leaving daughters alone? Or?
It is, because later on when that doesn't work, he says all sexes are equal now. He says that line. All genders are equal. Yeah.
Yeah. And while Gotham is partying, he's going to have his minions sneak into the houses and take the kids and exact his vengeance. And it's funny because, I thought it was only children, but apparently Max Shrek's adult Leatherface son is also included. Yeah,
firstborn. And I mean, if he had gotten kidnapped earlier in the film, we might not have gotten the great line reading of "Dad, go." Yeah. So another note I had read, I don't know if it was they didn't film it or they cut it in the script. Is in the original script there was going to be a longer scene of them like dragging kids out of their beds, and the execs were like, let's calm down with we get the point. Let's not see the actual kids being kidnapped. That might be horrifying. That might have been a McDonald's note. I can't remember, but someone had said, by the way, if I didn't mention this fully, McDonald's is the reason that Tim Burton did not make 3. McDonald's teamed up for Batman Forever, and they told the WB, they told Warner Brothers, he could be involved, but you got to get someone else. They were super pissed off about how Batman Returns kind of went for them. Again, they pulled the marketing campaign. McDonald's doesn't do that. They ride that shit until the next big thing. They pulled it. So here's something I never noticed about this movie, much like the rubber duck in the earlier part. I never noticed that the ball they go to is in the department store. Yeah, I never noticed that.
Because she has that, I hadn't noticed until Selena Kyle has that line. She's telling Bruce Wayne that they should sneak off, and she's like, there's a king's bed in the, I don't know, clothing department or something. Yeah. And that's when it clicked. I'm like, oh, they're at Shrek's store. It
clicked for me because as they were dancing, I think I saw on the wall the sign that said sporting goods. And I'm like, this isn't like a hotel. I'm like, oh, fuck, they're in the... So they're having this party. This is where Selena and Bruce have the great scene where they realize, this is Catwoman, I'm Batman. They try to talk it out. Selena has gone there to go full fucking vengeance. She's got a little single shoot pistol in her garter. She's going to kill Max. She's got, everybody's got revenge on the brain. Obviously, she wants revenge against Max Shrek, who killed her. Essentially there's a line in the movie where all the men in her life have killed her because, we didn't talk about it fully, but when Batman napalms her, she falls off a building again. And then later in the movie, the Penguin, after he finally realizes there's no way she's ever going to suck his dick, he puts a flying umbrella around her neck and sends her off to fly again. So all these different guys have kind of gotten rid of her once. She's going to kill Max Shrek. Bruce Wayne tells her not to do it. The Penguin explodes through the ground on his rubber duck, and he tells everybody about we're taking the firstborn sons. Max Shrek says, Max Shrek, I give them good credit for writing the character well. He gives a shit about nothing but money, but he loves his son.
Yep.
They prove it several times because as soon as the explosion happens, he goes over and goes, Chip, are you okay? He's not like that typical bad guy where he doesn't care about anything. He cares about his son to the point where he says, you don't want him, take me. I'm the bad guy, take me. And the Penguin's like, you know what? Fuck it. I'll take you.
I'll take you. You're a better actor.
You're a better actor. Yeah. This guy can be Leatherface. There's no Leatherface never talks. Just be big and terrorize people with a chainsaw. So he takes him back to his lair and explains to him, the plot. How many minutes in movie time does it take for Batman to foil this plot, Julio? The whole taking the kids. What, half a minute?
It's almost like he had a backup plan ready.
Yeah.
This is one of the things that he already has. He's run through scenarios with Alfred. It's this is what we do if I have to go through a narrow alley. This is what we do if somebody kidnaps all the firstborn sons in the city. Because it's just there's no hesitation. If there is, we don't see it.
No,
we just see Bruce Wayne sneak out of the party, and next thing we know, he what's the name of that actor, the comedian that has the monkey?
Vincent Schiavelli.
Yeah. Okay. So he just scares him. He shows up, he does a bad thing, and then next thing you know, the monkey's coming back to the penguin and saying, "Sorry, didn't happen." I have a note from Batman.
This is where the penguin says, "Okay, I'm tired of this dude. All bets are off." He has a big monologue to his army of penguins. They're all backpacked and have helmets on and missiles on them. And he says, "We're just going to destroy Gotham. Like, fuck it. Everybody dies tonight. If you're a surface dweller, you're fucking dead." So they start going out. One of my favorite scenes in this whole movie, kind of maybe not scenes, but just like elements, it's so weird, is the weird poodle woman counting everything down in that ice cave up top.
Yep.
In a very droll, like slightly maybe German, the penguins are approaching Gotham. And, I'm like, what a choice, man. This movie is full of so many fucking cool choices. I read an article in preparation for this, and it was very interesting, but like the headlines, what got me the most, it was how Batman Returns is the biggest blockbuster movie of all time. Because it really does. It goes out of its way just to be weird. Do you agree with that?
Oh, yeah. But it's what it needed. Like, if it's not this weird, then it doesn't work. It's what we're saying about the story. It has to be, it couldn't be any other way. That's basically, I don't know how, I haven't really watched many of the, like, latter day Tim Burton's. Like, I think I watched
Yeah, me too. I kind of lost interest. He kind of got, to a point where he was either doing, this is a property, but like just doing properties that I wasn't interested in.
There was that one with the kids. It was
the kids, Mrs.
like
Peregrine.
Yeah. I was like, it's just, if I didn't know that Tim Burton directed it, I wouldn't have known. Just from,
right,
which is something that you don't feel with his early work. And but I guess at this point in his career, like, I can't imagine Tim Burton making a different Batman movie, where he would be taking notes from the studio and like dutifully like making everything a little more vanilla, a little more accessible. We were talking, Alex and I, my co-host and I, were talking about this Bruce Willis, Matthew Perry comedy, the Whole Nine Yards.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
Oh, yeah.
So it's a movie that made a lot of money, and you watch it, and it's a pleasant enough watch, especially if you like the actors. They're good actors, they're being funny and whatever. But I told him, I was like, I get the feeling that this script was meant to be a really weird, black, fucked up comedy. But that wouldn't have made as much money as if you cast Bruce Willis and Matthew Perry.
Just vanilla it up.
I get it. Make it like very accessible. And I understand why those decisions are made. And that's just the way the business works. You put a lot of money into a movie, you want to get that money back. And I just think that we were blessed with the fact that 89 made so much money that the studio decided to trust Burton.
Yeah. Obviously to their failure, because, they got in heat with McDonald's and the movie didn't do as well. And, I saw it the day it came out, and I loved it then.
Mm-hmm.
I loved 89 more back then because it was still right, it was still right in the fucking center of that, and I loved 89 back in the day, but like this movie has so much more to appreciate over time. And I've been singing the praises of this one for years, where people are like, "You're fucking nuts." I'm like, no, really, if you look at it, 89 is a fun movie. I enjoy it, but it's an origin story. It's very much just, the Batman story that we all think of in terms of like, his parents get killed, he's starting out, and then the Joker's there. And however it plays out, those are the elements we have. Mm-hmm. This one, again, it's fucking crazy. It ends with penguins. There's fucking penguins shooting missiles, right? So the penguins are about to do their thing and destroy Gotham. You can't end a Batman movie without having a cool new toy. Batman comes through the sewers in like the bat fucking boat or glider. It's something. I love the fact that on his diagnostic, like on his tracking equipment, it actually shows like the penguin shapes, and it shows like the rubber duck or the duck vehicle shape. Alfred helps him jam some frequency. The penguins just all shut down and go back, walk their own way. So the penguin's been beaten again. Batman ends up accosting the penguin outside of, they're in this like old rundown kind of aquarium zoo type place. And the penguin decides to fight Batman. Bad idea. He jumps on him. Batman, throws him over.
He's lucky he didn't get like a bat full of acid.
Yeah,
Just
right in the eyes.
forbearing.
I'm fucking tired of you. So Batman ends up unleashing the bats that he hopefully hopefully they're fed, that he keeps inside the boat. They swarm the penguin. He falls probably 100 feet back into the sewer again. Batman goes down, and before all this happens, the button gets pushed, and the penguins, instead of destroying Gotham, destroy the penguin's lair. Mm-hmm. So everything's exploding, everything's getting destroyed. But Catwoman comes back. Max Schreck are still there. What happens between them, Julio?
So this is the real climax of the movie. At this point, we don't care about the penguin because we want the son of a bitch, Max Schreck,
right,
to get what's his. And it looks like he's going to get away because he tricked the monkey into giving him the key, and now he's escaping the cage that he was in. And he comes face to face with Catwoman. Kind of crazy that he doesn't recognize Selena Kyle right away, because by now her hair is just
not just that, but Batman's calling her Selena repeatedly.
Yes,
like I've known a Selena in my life, but I don't know a bunch of Selenas. You know what I mean?
Right. It's like, what are the odds? But yeah, she's coming for him. She just wants to kill him. She wants to do what she was gonna do at the party. Unfortunately, when he escaped the cage, he jumped in the water where all the dead accomplices of the penguin were, and so he gets a hold of a gun. So now he's armed. So there's this kind of like three-way confrontation. There's Selena Kyle coming for Max Schreck. Max Schreck has a gun, and then Batman shows up to try to stop her from killing him. Because clearly he's the only person that can kill anybody else in Gotham. Yeah,
no. If someone's gonna get fucking burnt or bombed or shot, it's Batman's turn. Yeah.
Yeah, they have this back and forth, Batman and Selena, Bruce and Selena, really, at this point. And Max Schreck is just kind of like watching it unfold, trying to put the pieces together.
Yeah, he's not the smartest guy. He's not the smartest guy in the room.
It's not until Bruce like rips off the cowl very easily. Were you surprised by how easily it just...
I want to talk about this to some length.
Okay.
Because this has always bothered me, right, in this movie. They make it kind of clear in the scene where he's getting dressed earlier. They don't show him getting dressed. They show him pulling his stuff. They make it pretty clear that the cowl goes on and then maybe the bottom of the suit snaps together.
Uh-huh.
And I wouldn't even have cared if he popped off the symbol and pulled the whole cowl off. Why the fuck does he rip his mask off? And you're
dramatic.
Right. And you're right. Why is it so easy to rip off? Like it just seems like a really thick, unmovable rubber, and he just tears it off. And it's dramatic purposes because, he's trying to get through to her, right? Like we all split down the middle. We all have a dual nature. You're going to be okay. For 30 years, I see that scene and I go, why is he tearing it off like that? And how is he tearing it off like that?
Do you think at this point, Bruce Wayne has already done the mental math and he's like, there's no way that Max Schreck gets out of here alive. So it's okay that I'm revealing my identity.
There's a part of me that wonders if either he knows he's not going to leave alive, or if he's so to the point that he wants to help Selena that he actually doesn't care.
He's like I can handle it.
I can handle it. Nobody's going to believe this guy. Much like my being framed earlier in this movie, if he says something, it'll last 5 minutes and it'll blow by. So part of me is almost like, that might be a brave move on his part to say, I like you enough to try to help you enough that I don't fucking care if this guy knows. But again, you're right. I think, there's probably a good chance that he's also like, she's going to kill him anyway.
Yeah, this is really, I know we're kind of like making light of it and there's a lot of fun to be had with it, but I love this climatic moment between them, and I've learned to appreciate it more every time I watch it, because I think, especially as a kid, when I first watched it, it felt really anticlimactic because I want to see Batman punch the bad guy, and instead what happens is Bruce gets shot out of the climax. Right.
You're right. Yeah, you're right. It's a Batman movie where there's nobody physically intimidating to him or a match for him. The Penguin's not, and Schreck is not. And you're right. Schreck, Bruce Wayne, what are you doing dressed like the Batman? And like that line, and then shoots him. He is the Batman. He shoots him. And now you're right. He's eliminated. Now the finale of this movie is Selena and Max.
When he's talking to her, there was this thing that, again, I wouldn't have thought about, years ago. And it's just like, you get older and you like add your own baggage to every movie you watch. And I think that there's so much, like, the conversation about mental health is just so much more prominent and, upfront these days. And so, he's trying to talk to her, and it's clear that she has problems. And he's like, I had problems too. And, the Penguin had problems. And I kept thinking, but you had money and you had Alfred.
Yeah.
Like the Penguin was like in the sewers, and he kind of like had to make do with what he had. And Selena clearly had a mother that was not very supportive, and she's working a shitty job for a gangster, basically.
Yeah, who murders her, essentially. Yeah.
It's kind of like a side effect of growing older. We're like, he's like they say, Bruce Wayne didn't quite check his privilege before he started giving Selena that full speech. And I know it's well intentioned, but they're not in the same position. And through the entire movie, I think that he keeps trying to, maybe even the movie is trying to draw these parallels between them. And yes, there are things that they have in common, but there's also, I think that the movie also highlights how different they are because of their social status.
Max Schreck has a great line earlier in the movie when Bruce Wayne is saying that he knows that the Penguin's up to something funny, and Max Schreck is like, shame on you. If circumstances were different, he would have been your bunkmate in school, in private school. And absolutely, right? Like it's all about like what they've been through.
Yeah, it's which is a hell of a point for this movie to make, I guess, because it's just so silly and it's so over the top, and it's so it can trick you into thinking that all it cares about is just like the cool visual stuff and the set pieces and the quirkiness. But then at the end, there is just some real humanity for the main characters. I mean, not Shrek. Shrek is a monster. I guess, he cares about his son, but that's a moment in the movie. But the main three, Bruce, Selena, and let's call him Oswald in this one moment. There was some, I guess it surprises me that there was much more thought put into them than I expected going into the movie, and that I think we've all learned to expect from, it's just that kind of, it's not even the comic book stigma of, it's a comic book movie, so it's probably mostly about like the fight scenes and the special effects, but also specifically the Burton Batmans. I don't know that when they're talked about as far as this level of characterization. I think that we talk about the style, and we talk about
I think it's style over substance.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the first movie, it's the Joker. Like you go to the Joker a lot, but this movie, there's a lot of good characterization. And like you're saying, Max Schreck is the true monster. The only one, so Selena kills him. He shoots her a few more times. She keeps saying she has more lives. She's counting them off. And then she essentially, between pulling a power cable and a stun gun, gives the greatest kiss of all time. Max Schreck dies a monster's death. Like when they find his body, he is just this burnt up corpse with the white hair, and he looks fucking horrifying. But even the Penguin, who survives his fall long enough to try, to pull one more last thing, when he drops over and dies, his penguins bury him.
Yep.
Like there is like, no matter how bad or how terribly horny he was, someone cared about him. And, you do feel kind of for him that, that he, again, we go back to the first scene, attempted infanticide. Like they weren't hoping he would like survive. They were hoping he would drown. So that is sad. Yeah, no, you're right. I think that's one of the things that sets this movie apart is I think the time they spend on characterization.
So do you remember the first time you watched it? Did you expect that final reveal, Selena's still out there? Because she had one life left.
No, and the funny part about that is do you know that was filmed like weeks before the movie came out?
Oh, really?
Yep, the movie was supposed to end with Batman and or with Bruce Wayne and Alfred in the car, Merry Christmas, he has the cat, and that was the end of the movie. And they wanted to solidify for the third movie or possibly a spinoff that she survived. So like I think it was like a month before the movie released, they brought in a stand-in. They couldn't get Michelle Pfeiffer. That's why you don't see her face. And they filmed the scene. Even if you watch it, it looks kind of a little bit different, like green screened or maybe, something like that. I think they said it costs like $200,000. They added it in real quick. So no, I mean, I don't remember thinking about it, but I remember as soon as you saw that going, much like the way Batman 89 ends, where it ends the same way with him on the building. Oh, Batman's going to be back. Okay, she's going to be back. She is now part of this series. And unfortunately, we did not get that.
McDonald's had other ideas.
We did an episode on Batman Forever. I won't spoil it, but what I will tell you is, if you want to go back, you can find it titled Batman Forever and listen to it. All right, Julio, let's talk a little bit about box office.
So I'm talking about fractions of a penny here, and over time, they add up to a lot.
Like I said before, this thing was a budget of $80 million. It was number one domestic box office in 1992. It made $163 million. So here it is. June 19th is when it was released. So the weekend of 19th through 21st, I have the top 5 movies, starting with number 5 that weekend, Lethal Weapon 3. Out for 6 weeks. It made $4.7 million. House Sitter. I think that's Sinbad. I think. $7 million, 2 weeks. Harrison Ford pointing at somebody, most likely. Patriot Games, 3 weeks, $7.8 million.
I think he's running in that one.
He's running and pointing. Number 2, Sister Act, $7.8 million. It was out for 4 weeks and opening at $46 million. When $46 million was a lot to open on a weekend, by the way, not like a Thursday night. Batman Returns. So that is the box office for Batman Returns. I did mention it earlier. I want to just mention it one more time. It made $163 million domestically in 1992. Number one movie. Batman 89 domestically in 89 made $251 million. So there is a big difference there. All right. It's the time, Julio, where we talk about our feelings in terms of quantifying it with a number. Let's rate this thing.
Little Hand says it's time to rock and roll.
Bring the noise.
Reduce everything to a number.
That's right. So here we go. 0 being the worst, 5 being the best, quarter and half scale optional. I'm going to go first on this one. We talked about this at length. I've always really enjoyed this. I think aesthetically it's amazing. Performances across the board I really enjoy. Again, you did say, and I agree with you, sometimes how did we get from here to here to here? Some of the plot elements, it can feel a little mishmash, or like the next 5 minutes of plot, he's running for mayor for 15 minutes, and then that's not happening anymore. He's going to kill all the first. No, that's not happening anymore. So sometimes it feels almost like some convenience is happening to just keep this thing moving, but I'm okay with that. I'm going to go with 4.25. I really enjoy this movie. I don't think it's too long. It's 2 hours and 6 minutes. I feel like I'm immersed in the world of Gotham. I love the music. I think Danny Elfman killed it. One of the things I always loved about this movie, we didn't really talk too much about it, is the Christmas time snow idea behind it. I remember the first time that I saw the theatrical poster for this movie. I was, 16 years old. I had gone to see a film. I was leaving. I knew Batman Returns was coming. No internet. And on the wall of the theater, they had the Batman logo, very similar to the first movie, but with snow all around it. And just the date, and it might have said Returns. And I immediately went, oh shit, it's gonna be wintry somehow. What did that mean to me? I don't know, but the imagery hit me immediately. So yeah, I really love this movie. I will fight for this one. Again, in this line of movies, it's not only it's the best and the last good one, because Forever, I'll spoil the episode. Still go back and listen to it. It sucks. And Batman and Robin, obviously, I think that thing, its reputation precedes itself. So that's what I give it. I give it 4.25. Julio from the Contrarians. Before you give anything out there, tell everybody all about your show, what you got going on.
What is the Batman Returns Rotten Tomatoes score? I can't believe I didn't look that
I
up.
did not look that up because we only do that for our trash episodes.
Because, Batman Returns, it's comfortably at an 80% tomato meter score. So that's enough to qualify it as fresh. It has the actual it's not just a red tomato, but it has the red tomato seal.
With the seal, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm actually surprised. No, it makes sense that critics would have loved it, and it's just audiences that kind of were not as eager to to go for repeat viewings. But what we do at the Contrarians is we look at that number, at the tomato meter score, and we just argue against what it's telling you. So if it's a fresh movie, we'll talk about it like it's a bad movie on the show. We'll just, whether we believe it or not, we'll just pretend. We'll try to be funny about it. And if it's a rotten movie, we'll do the opposite. We'll talk about it like it's a great movie. So if we were doing Batman Returns on the show at 80%, certified fresh, yeah, we'd just spend, we'll recount the plot as we were just making fun of it. And, we'd really zero in on all those things that don't make sense that we were talking about over the past hour or so. And then we tell you on the second half of the show, we tell you how we really feel about the movie. So you would hear me, in this case, you would hear me say really bad things about Batman Returns, and in the second half of the show I'll be like, I love it more every time I watch it, the truth. So yeah, it's mostly, we try to be funny at first, and then we try to be a little more analytical on the second half, and it's been fun. It's been several years now, and
it's a great show. You guys have a great show, and the segment idea really works really well, and you guys are both, I've never met Alex, but he's really great too. You got two great hosts.
He just rewatched, I sent you that screen cap of that text he sent me. He just rewatched Batman Returns, and I guess it's gone up in his estimation because he, for a while, we'd had this discussion where he was not just like an 89 guy, but also a guy that didn't think Batman Returns was particularly good. And I guess somehow he just rewatched it and changed his mind. So I look forward to talking to him about it, and also to him listening to this episode, because he'll probably get a kick out of it. Now, my score, I had it last time I watched it. I logged on Letterboxd, gave it 4 stars, so it'll be a 4. Honestly, after this rewatch, I like it even more. So it's a 4.5 for me.
Ooh.
I know. There is, ultimately, I don't know that they could ever, no matter how many rewatches, I don't know that they could ever trump The Dark Knight as far as, what I want in a Batman movie. But this comes really close, and it surprises me every time I watch it.
Yeah, you got to qualify it too, because the Dark Knight trilogy and this, the Burton stuff is so different, like what they're going for,
Yeah, but see, I have friends who appreciate the Nolan Batman, as movies, but they will go and say, like, that's not my Batman, because Batman would never retire. And I'll be like, okay, I get it. But it's Nolan's Batman, and I like it. So it's specifically The Dark Knight. I think it doesn't miss a step. I guess if I don't give this one, Batman Returns, the full 5, it's because I think that it misses some steps. I just don't care because I'm having so much fun. I'm just mesmerized by everything else that gets right.
The jumbleness of the plot a little bit brings it down a little bit for me, but I don't notice it when I'm watching it because I'm immersed in the characters and I'm immersed in what's happening. And again, like, this is the first time I've ever noticed, like, Batman doesn't talk for 40 minutes. Like, doesn't matter. No, it doesn't matter because it's not like you're waiting for 40 minutes. Like, this Selena Kyle, this Max Schreck. You're like, oh, these are cool characters. This is a good, they're building a world, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. Commissioner Gordon probably gets the right end of the deal here and in the 89 one. Like, for such an important character in the mythology, they never really do much with him.
Right. And that was part of the thing I was saying, like, in these movies remind me a little bit of the 66, is that he's just kind of there as the commissioner of police. That's it. It's not like, Gary Oldman, where there's a whole story and a building. It's just, we need a guy to be in charge of the cops that Batman talks to once in a while. And in this movie, he's literally in one scene, put the signal up. And then it's like, okay, go home, Pat Hingle, go home.
Well, they call it back for one other one. It's when after the Ice Queen falls and then the cops burst into that roof and shoot at Batman.
Right.
And Pat Hingle comes in and is like, don't shoot. Too late. They're ready.
Yeah. Yeah, they woke him up. They're like, Pat, come back. We need you for one more shot in this movie. Go check out The Contrarians. Great show on every podcatcher you can find out there. And you guys are weekly, right? So pretty much every week, or?
It works out that way. Yeah, basically. We do every 10 days, but we have enough stuff that, pretty much every week. Yeah.
Okay. You're not like clever like our buddy Stu on the 2s or anything like that, right? Like, you're not putting stuff out on the dates that end in 2 like Stu?
No, because we don't record that far in advance, so we can 100% guarantee we're going to hit the 2s. So, no. We just we're trying to get better at it, but we record and we edit and we put it out, and it basically averages to about 3-4 episodes a month. So.
All good stuff. All good stuff. I appreciate you coming back, and I'll have you back many, many more times. We'll figure something out.
Anytime you want. This was a pleasure, as I expected it to be. And it doesn't have to be always like great movies. I mean, I think that now.
Well, I had you on for the Octagon. I mean, I know that.
Well, I didn't know if this was just kind of like an apology for making me watch the Octagon.
No. I remember we were on Stu's show, and we both came together on our love for Batman Returns, like you said. So yeah. No. I'll have you on for a trash episode. I'll have you on for another SFA 80s. I'll pick something really bad. We'll have a good time.
Perfect. Yeah. No,
all right.
I'll be here.
Thank you very much, man. So this is The Pint. You can check us out on all the podcatchers. You can check us out on social media. Instagram and Twitter are now at The Pint Podcast. Facebook, The Pint Podcast. And we have a Patreon, $2.50 a month. Gets you some extra episodes, some other cool stuff. The Patreon/The Pint. Check us out there. And until next week, see ya.
It's over, Johnny. It's over! Nothing is over! Nothing! You just don't turn it off!